evening, I'm Samantha Vadas in Hong Kong and welcome to ViuTV News. Coming up on tonight's show, a sea of black on the streets of Hong Kong as huge crowds demand the city's leaders step down and withdraw the extradition bill once and for all. Scores of Hong Kongers mourn the loss of a protester who fell to his death while campaigning against the controversial changes to the law. And Beijing's liaison office backs the chief executive's decision despite reports China is unhappy with her leadership. Good evening. In almost a carbon copy of last week's unprecedented march, Hong Kong streets are again flooded with protesters, piling even more pressure on the government to withdraw its controversial extradition bill once and for all. Huge crowds in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands, continue to march from Victoria Park to government offices, demanding Carrie Lam step down. This only a day after the chief executive shelved the law amendments following mounting unrest and violent clashes. Dressed in black, the protesters marched in sweltering summer heat, arguing that by only delaying the bill, Lam is just kicking the can down the road. Our reporter Britt Clennett was there and sent us this report.
Well, after Chief Executive Carrie Lam's announcement yesterday that the government would suspend plans to change the extradition law, the question very much became, would Hong Kongers buy it? Well, judging by the crowds here today and the people who have turned out, the sentiment here, people really aren't buying it. They are angry still at her plans, that she hasn't scrapped them entirely, and are calling for Carrie Lam to step down.
Carrie Lam ignored our opinions. She just treated our views like they were rubbish. She even criticized the peaceful protest on June 12 as a riot. But a lot of people who were there that day have said online that that was not the case. And we are coming out today just to fight for the rights that we deserve.
The government has to shoulder some responsibility. If they listened to the 1 million people who marched last Sunday, and if they withdrew the bill after some clashes started, I'm sure there wouldn't be injuries or even death.
I joined today's march because I was roused by the crowd's indignation. Even though I have an exam tomorrow, I still have to protest. The police labeled what was originally a peaceful gathering as a riot and used tear gas and rubber bullets. It was a lot more violent than before.
The group of young people out there on Wednesday was simply voicing their demands. And to have the police open fire on them, I feel that was absolutely inhumane. We didn't do anything wrong, and it wasn't a riot.
Now, they're also angry at what they describe as police brutality on Wednesday night when police used tear gas to disperse protesters that day. Those violent scenes that we saw on Wednesday are in stark contrast to what I'm seeing today here. It's remained largely peaceful. That doesn't mean that people aren't passionate. They really have come out here in the droves today. The crowds are enormous, and they're really here to take a stand and to demand better leadership.
Well, big crowds also gathered at Admiralty, laying flowers on Queensway to mourn a protester who fell to his death last night. A helmet with the words "Rest in Peace" was placed at the spot where the man fell. Some burned incense by the roadside. The victim climbed scaffolding at Pacific Place earlier in the day to hang up a sign protesting the extradition bill. At one point, it's believed he climbed up to a dangerous spot but slipped as firefighters tried to pull him back to safety. He was taken to hospital where he was pronounced dead.
I think it's all Chief Executive Carrie Lam's fault. How can she still say everything happened because there wasn't enough explanation?
Yesterday when we knew that the incident, we felt very sad. And so we shared the incident with our friends, but it's really very heartbroken.
Well, opponents of the bill are applauding Hong Kongers for today's march and want to see the fight go on to have it scrapped altogether. On RTHK's letter to Hong Kong, Dennis Kwok described the recent action as David facing Goliath. The lawmaker also condemned the scale of police violence used during Wednesday's protest, but Kwok praised Hong Kongers for standing their ground and the mostly calm and organised way the rallies were held.
Hong Kongers are peaceful, but they're not numb. We will fight for the respect of our autonomy. We remain an enclave of human rights and civil liberties at the footsteps of a country whose leadership do not share our values nor beliefs. I know it can feel hopeless at times, but we have to carry on, and I urge the international community to keep supporting us.
Well, the pro-Beijing camp is divided over how and why Carrie Lam decided to U-turn on the extradition law. Some are even calling for the chief executive to apologise to the city. Exco member Ronnie Tong hammered Lam's cabinet members for being too gentlemanly and not explaining the bill in layman's terms. Speaking on radio, he also said the chances of seeing a similar bill tabled to LegCo in the next year are very slim. So the situation right now is no different to scrapping it altogether. Former SAR Security Chief Regina Ip blasted Lam's administration, saying they misjudged the situation and didn't listen to the people.
In the past 4 months, this bill has caused deep rifts in the wider public. A lot of Hong Kongers have felt disconcerted by it, and of course the commercial sector has been affected too. And if the chief executive can make a wholehearted apology, it could help restore the public's trust in the administration.
Meantime, Beijing says it supports, respects and understands Carrie Lam's decision to put the extradition law on the back burner. About 200 of the city's NPC and CPPCC representatives met with Liaison Officer Director Wang Jimin this morning. After an hour-long meeting, officials reaffirmed their support for the SAR government's decision. The Liaison Office has in the past week blamed foreign powers for interfering in Hong Kong's legislative process. It's also been forced to deny reports Beijing has doubts about Lam's leadership.
It's very unfortunate. Many foreign powers have continually interfered and smeared the bill. The liaison office said, according to a partial survey, foreign countries have delivered a total of 67 statements against the bill. All of these interfering behaviors have made things rather complicated.
Well, one country that's been keeping a very close eye on all of this week's event is the UK. It's welcomed Carrie Lam's decision to suspend the extradition bill, but has again reiterated its concerns about any amendments in their current form.
The freedoms of Hong Kong, enshrined in the Joint Declaration, which is a legally binding international agreement between the UK and China, they are what has made Hong Kong one of the most dynamic, vibrant, successful countries on the planet. And Britain stands behind that agreement that we signed. Like everyone else, we are very worried that this new law might have been against either the spirit or the letter of that agreement. And we stand foursquare behind the people of Hong Kong.
Well, coming up next, the latest from the world of business. Well, Hong Kong home prices appear to be softening again after hitting a record at the end of May. A gauge compiled by Centreline Property Agency and published in the SCMP shows prices for lived-in homes was down almost 1.5% for the week ending June the 9th. It's the second week in a row these numbers have dropped. Experts say this might be the start of a broader market correction fueled by uncertainties like the US-China trade war. Several days ago, Golden Financial walked away from $1 billion land purchase at Kai Tak, citing economic concerns. A big week is brewing on Wall Street that could dictate the state of play for global markets. Investors are holding out for an interest rate decision from the US Federal Reserve, along with latest housing data. Fred Katayama reports.
Here's what to look for in the week ahead on Wall Street. Federal Reserve policymakers will announce their interest rate decision on Wednesday. Traders on Friday paired their bets that the central bank would lower lending rates next week after seeing solid growth in retail sales in May. But many economists expect policymakers to signal they're ready to cut borrowing costs later this year. Investors will get more data on the housing market for the month of May. On Tuesday, expect housing starts to have risen to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 1.238 million units. On Friday, look for the Commerce Department to report that existing home sales rose 1.2%. Book retailer Barnes & Noble reports results Wednesday. Investors will be looking for any update the company gives on its sale to hedge fund Elliott Management.
The world's largest shipping company is looking to use melting Arctic ice to its advantage. AP Moller-Maersk is in talks with Russia's state-owned icebreaker to send more goods via the North Pole, a route becoming more accessible due to climate change. David Pollard reports.
Big ships, big plans. Russia launched a new icebreaker last month as it bids to make the so-called Northern Sea route commercially viable. It's ambitious, but has just got a thumbs up of sorts from one shipping giant. Maersk told Reuters it's in talks to explore the possibility of a service in cooperation with Russia's state-owned icebreaker operator, Atomflot. Last summer, Maersk became the first to send a container ship through the route. It's only accessible around 3 months of the year due to ice. But with global warming, that could change, and Maersk says there's growing demand to ship goods from the Far East to West Russia via the Arctic North, along shipping lanes that could save thousands of miles over southern routes through the Suez Canal. The Ural can slice through ice 3 meters thick. It's one of a trio of new nuclear-powered icebreakers that will replenish and expand Russia's fleet. Officials say the ships will allow for year-round navigation in the next decade.
Time for a break now, but up next, prayers once again ring out from within the Notre Dame in its first service since a devastating fire.
They are adorable, they are curious, and they are a little bit crazy.
You like avocado, huh?
Capturing every mischievous moment of the little ones. Bringing you the funniest and sassiest kids' videos from all around the world. The most hilarious, ridiculous, and timeless bits of growing up.